One of the things that Lisa sent to you all, and I'm not sure if we had given it to you before, but this document called Attachment C Work Plan. And it is actually the contract for the project with the kind of work tasks that are to be addressed to make this plan. So there's 19 tasks on this, and we've been working up to, at our last workshop, we believe that we completed up to task 12. There's still some discussion about it. I know Irene has comments. She's already commented on this working document nearly a year ago, and we, during the summer, completely revised it, reworked it with additional information and attempts to address the issues that New York State had. So that's an important part of the business. I think the other thing that we'll try to talk about at the end of the afternoon is where we're going to go on from here. But Lisa's asked us to present a kind of summary of the community activities that we've had. We've had two events here in this room, a meeting in April of 2023, and our workshop in June in 2024. So there's been two public presentations. And so we've sort of cobbled them together in hopefully a brief presentation of those two presentations kind of merged together. What we see as our task, besides these 19 issues, is that the first phase of work was data collection, that we collected information related to the issues of flooding in Port Jefferson. That involves a kind of review of what in the grants called the community profile, basically a presentation of the basic components, the characteristics of Port Jefferson, with an emphasis on how they and the issues of flooding interact with one another. So we completed that phase, and that was the first meeting last April. Then there was a pause with the new administration, and the mayor wanted to wait until she understood what was happening with this grant and to organize issues that finally have come down to, very thankfully, Lisa being involved in organizing the village part of this, so that we can, as the consultants to the village, can provide her with the information that then goes to the PAC, and then from the PAC up to Albany. The second phase, which was the workshop that we just had in June, was to identify the problems of the village which come from the data collection, and to establish priority projects. That's the sort of title of Task 12. And we've been actually working on that for quite some time, even before the pause in the project. Because we felt that the data collection provided enough information that the projects were extremely obvious that needed to be solved. So I'll go through this hopefully quick presentation. I've tried to make sort of bullets to help move it along, and maybe Lisa, if you could. The problem and the next one. The problem is obvious. It doesn't even need words once you see it. We have a collection of images of flooding issues in the village that go back on the lower left to an old photograph, we don't know the date, that the village has of an early flooding at the fire station, and to the right of that, more recent flooding at the fire station, which we could have photographs from several incidences of that. So, and the history of the problem, this seems important, and we can go to the next one. To look at the history of the village, because the history of the village actually describes the flooding problem pretty well. And there are several maps of the village, but there are two that are particularly important. This 1873 on the left and the 1917 map on the right. And what you can see with it, I guess I'm going to have to get up, is that there's water coming from the south, down right by, this is about where the high school is, comes down to the intersection basically of Barnum and Main Street, and the whole west side of Main Street is Drowned Swamp. And in this stream that comes down, at a certain point, Crystal Lake was created. There are some stories that it might have been for producing ice. But it, right at this point on Crystal Lake is where the firehouse is. And then various streams, maps show different streams, go out, bring the water from the upper hinterland, upland, down to the harbor. And in this map, you can see, in fact, there was a shipbuilding establishment on the south side of West Broadway with a drawbridge that brought a connection into the harbor. This map doesn't show it, but the 1917 shows basically where Mill Creek is part of the issue. The Crystal Lake is here. There was a pond about where the tennis courts are at the high school. And that connects up with that information on that map. Now we have Barnum and streets that have been put in. This was actually put in the 1870s, the causeway across the marshland. The shipbuilding has atrophied a bit, but the water has been sort of contained more in creeks or streams, but still flows under West Broadway out to the harbor. We can do the next ones. And these, there's one down in the entry to the Village Hall. It's the upper left one. But this is basically downtown Port Jefferson with the those streams that are identifiable on the map. This is coming down West Broadway into almost down to Beach Street and going across the harbor. The harbor came right up, as you can see in those maps, to right up to West Broadway. And some of the water behind West Broadway, Crystal Lake, which you can see is a substantial water body that is still there underneath.
You can see the steeple of the Methodist Church beyond.
Yeah. And this is looking north to the harbor, and you can see Crystal Lake kind of in the middle of this image. So those are the issues of the problem. The existing conditions, we could go. This is mostly a phase of mapping, and this is part of the data collection. A lot of significant mapping to help locate the problems or to help address the location of problems. But this is a most important and quite elegant map of topographic map that shows what we have identified. It's identified in the grant, but the study involves the watershed. So the study area is the blue lines, and the red are the village, which are basically following the blue lines, except that the village extends to the east quite a bit further. You can see Main Street coming down and West Broadway connecting up to it. And the elegance of the topographic map shows when the lines are close together that it's extremely vertical and steep. But it basically the edges of the town, the village rather, are the top of the watershed, where in fact the contours start to go in the other direction. So this is a bowl of land that basically focuses right here in downtown. And that focus is also on the other problem of the village, which is the harbor. The harbor has been flooding a bit more recently in the extreme rainstorms, and the storm surges from the harbor are predicted, and I'll get into that in a moment, predicted to increase along with the rising tide. So we've got water coming from the south in this bowl and water coming potentially from the north from the harbor. Can you go back just one moment? This map shows the build out basically of the village, and you can see the kind of buildings are all in black. That the commercial district has the big buildings. The older residences are denser and close to the downtown, and the later developments have larger properties and are more spread out. So there's a significant pattern to the village that comes basically on the spine of Main Street, coming down from the top of the watershed. The other part of this image is the gray are all impermeable surfaces, parking lots, basic public parking lots. None of the private parking lots, actually that's not true because I just see some up here. But basically these are all mostly public parking lots. One of the things that we identified, and it came actually from early PAC meetings as recommendations, because we were starting out collecting information basically on the commercial downtown, was the issue of the steep streets and how much they contribute to the flooding issues, and how, if they could be contained in some way, it might alleviate a lot of the flooding problems. So we've been mapping, there's 20 of these steep streets, most all of them in the watershed come down to feed Route 25A, Main Street, which actually Bob Robbie helped us with some DOT maps. In 1931, they built the basically the drainage system under Route 25A. So all these kind of branches come down to this major trunk and feed down to the intersection of Barnum and Main Street, which is where those streams were coming, intersecting from the high school and Crystal Lake, which was just behind that. So these are a major factor. They're all quite steep. They all pitch down to this spine, and have very few catch basins. And what few there are piped together. It's a standard road catch basin system where this street has catch basins that are piped into the Route 25A main piping, which is between 20 and 30 inches in diameter coming down. And the other streets don't have catch basins. So whether it has it or it doesn't, it's either going on the surface or in the pipes down to Main Street. That's all going into a culvert, which goes from Barnum to the back of this building, to the creek, and from the creek out into the harbor. So it's typical that water finds its ultimate source. It's going to the harbor, but it's coming through this steep street system, as well as the impermeable paving and parking issues of downtown.
Question?
Yeah.
Do we have a record of all those pipes?
We, the Cashin report, the Mill Creek report, has identified the pipes. They didn't identify the size. They do have comments on how clogged they are, how the catch basins are clogged.
All the pipes?
They This is taken from a map from Cashion. Those are the pipes that they knew of. But it's easy, I'll get to this in a moment of our next phase. I can come back to
Okay.
your question. Here we go. Okay, climate change conditions and predictions. This again is important data collection. There's multiple sources, NOAA, FEMA, all these abbreviations, and the USGS data. So we've spent quite a bit of time collecting it, sifting through it, trying to understand it. The interesting thing about this is they have mapped the conditions that exist over time, but they also, in many cases, have predictions of what's coming and draw prediction conclusions from sort of historical data. So groundwater conditions, this is actually more fun than our report has because it's interactive. You can go to any spot and find out how close the water is to the surface. And the dark red is less than 11 feet. In fact, even at Barnum in the CVS, the water is at 5 feet below. So the 11 feet is a kind of exaggeration. The conditions of 11 feet start way back at this end. But then you can see the gradations of how close the groundwater is. So problem number one is Drowned Meadow is still there. We met with some hydrologists from Stony Brook, Mr. Hansen, who retired, that made us aware of the fact that that water is still there. We put earth over it, we put asphalt over it, but it has to still be there. So that's one of the problems of Port Jefferson. It's one of the reasons, several, that the USGS selected Port Jefferson to study because it's a perfect catastrophe in their mind. The other data collection is about precipitation, the kind of progression over time of precipitation and the fact that it's increasing and how much it might increase. So that's sort of problem number two, that the rainfall, extreme storms, as we all know, are increasing. Problem number three is that from the harbor, the tide is rising. And there was storm surges on a full moon, high tide. We get, and if it's windy, fortunately, we haven't had many big windstorms at that time. The water rises up, and one of the storms, was it last April? It might have been the April storm, where the water came right up to the top of the bulkhead. So if it goes any higher, we're not going to just get water from the hills, we're going to get it from the harbor. And so there's a lot of very scary predictions of years 2020 up to 2100 and kind of low projections up to high projections. The 2100, it might be 6 feet higher, which is pretty low compared to the tide that came into Florida last week. So this is a 12-inch sea level rise, and you can go over here and you can see that by 2050, a low to medium projection is 11 inches. So Village Hall is here. I thought that there's one where Village Hall is an interesting little island, but it's now underwater. And then finally, if you take these multiple issues, NOAA and actually New York State have made kind of risk maps, degree of risk, and this is again what the USGS study that's now ongoing is involved in. That you can see extreme risk on the edge, high risk in most all of downtown, and moderate risk goes all the way up to Barnum And we've actually seen some of that, but this is a little scarier than what we've actually seen, and it's coming. We, in terms of our data collection, one of the things that is in the grant request is to look at natural. In fact, the application the village made was directed towards trying to find natural solutions to stormwater flooding mitigation. So this is 4 of I think we had 8 different in our plan. Well-known ideas about how to contain stormwater flooding. And it depends on whether it's ponding or whether it's running, but there's multiple solutions, including even ones of addressing the major asphalted parking lots.
Can you just name each one of those, because I really can't see. I can't
Okay,
even see
sorry,
on
yeah,
the computer.
the rain gardens, which we know pretty well, but there's variations of rain gardens, and very similar to rain gardens are bioswales, which are sometimes more linear and continuous, but you can kind of see in these images that they're basically, it cuts into, there's one in front of Village Hall, which is a little too high, so the water isn't going in it, but nevertheless, it's a rain garden. Bioretention planters is what's listed here. And these 3 are relatively similar. There's a issue of tree trenches, collecting water at trees, and even one of the kind of fallouts from this is the trees themselves catch water on the leaves and evaporate, and so they are a kind of a retention system, natural retention system. But there were several others, including pervious paving, to let the water go through the paving. And in Brooklyn now they're putting in streets with asphalt that is pervious. So there's new things coming about all the time. Another one that isn't on this so a little summary is daylighting creeks, which is an important one for us. In the grant, it requests, and again, it's the village wrote the request for the grant, and it was included in the grant, to look at past plans. That's typical of a planning project, but 2 were specifically called out. The 2011 Mill Creek Watershed plan. That's a smaller definition, a smaller watershed that influences the creek itself, but a very good study by Cashin with a lot of valuable data and recommendations. And the other one was a study that we did, the 2013 waterfront plan. Harbor, yeah. Yeah, I can't remember the name. But anyway, that's 2013, and that is in fact in the appendix of the 2030 comprehensive plan that the village
There it
is working from. Yes, so this is work that we did in and was part of this 2013 plan, which was to find a place for 300 cars so that this could become this and create a passive park. The village at that time was, it wasn't a sustainable grant, but it was a grant to connect a green waterfront from Barnum all the way over to Centennial Park
And I'll just add, and in the other direction, to connect the village to the harbor.
Yes, which was
So it's kind of
important goal.
cross axis of green going one way and people connection. So it was really focused on that urbanistically rather than specifically on sustainability.
A big part of that is a green passive park that by referring and using that already approved plan, the issue of studying it for sustainability and flood mitigation becomes obviously the
And where
the
did you,
issue.
where did you talk about putting the 300 cars?
Pardon?
Where
Oh,
did you-
where?
Yeah.
Two possible places. One, for, what's it called? Multiple uses. In parts of the village where, cars are, spaces are available, during special needs. BOCES was one of the suggestions. There's 100 spaces there that could be possibly utilized. The other was proposing, could you go back? Actually two locations, but this was a parking structure. 3-story parking structure in the Arden lot that would take up the problem. The other solution to this was that this remains to be very poorly laid out, and but the Brookhaven has recently added some car parking there to bring 135 of the 300 spaces
That's
over
the boat trailer lot.
to the boat trailer park.
So they added 135 spots for cars in that lot?
No.
They didn't, they could have. This plan had it, but
They did add some though, right?
yes, they do. There's about 50 spaces.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And the Mill Creek report. The Mill Creek starts up in the western hills, and it comes through natural drainage down to Brook Road, which is over here, and feeds across through piping underneath Brook Road to Old Mill Creek Pond, which for years no one knew it was there, basically. But Rob Laravi's been single-handedly clearing the pond, and it's a beautiful space, serene, wonderful attribute for the village. And so we've kind of uncovered a gem here. And there's two things on this lower part of this image. This was a plan from around 2009 to make a greenway, walkway, and clean up the creek from the West Broadway to Mill Creek Pond. And there's a whole list of things that could be done to achieve that. And in 2014, this segment from Chandler Square to Barnum was cleaned up. In fact, this was picked up in the Mill Creek watershed plan. And from that plan, a few things were done. They cleaned out underneath Barnum, and they tried to solve some issues at Brook, but they built the walkway, which interpretive walkway, wonderful signage. In fact, Gil Hansen worked on the signage with Millie Mikos. And it's been a beautiful brick paving. Unfortunately, as fast as Bob can clear the creek, it gets filled up again, and today you can't even see the creek. So as you walk by, it needs continuous maintenance. But in any case, the one of the things that's an important recommendation was that this whole thing become an interpretive walkway all the way to Old Mill Creek Pond.
You can go.
This we can do quickly. This was the end of that first meeting, April 23, where we identified a whole slew of little possible solutions, and there are several maps that kind of zero in on these, but of places where it might be possible to do natural solutions of stormwater mitigation using those ideas that were presented in the images before.
Can I mention something?
Yes.
So this is Irene with the Department of State. Again, hi everyone. I just want to make a note that it's great that projects are being discussed and all this information is relevant. But I do want to point out that the this document that's being called a report and at some point it needs to be finalized, and in the sense that there's the information and an analysis to where DOS would feel more comfortable where projects can then be discussed. I'm not sure how much information has been relayed to the PAC, but DOS has provided comments into the document, and I haven't quite began reviewing that. And if you know, Word document could be shared, it would make my life easier. But I've provided that PDF and I made it into a Word document. But I really want to emphasize that a lot of work has been put into the project thus far, and I give kudos to all the efforts to get community involvement and in drafting that and including more people into the advisory committee. So thank you all for your hard effort. But I really would like to see, you know, once DOS provides the comment, efforts be focused on wrapping up this first part, right? This document of the planning document, to where the projects can then be really firmed up and revisited to the community to get comments based on the new information and an appropriate analysis. And then it seems that this portion can kind of be deemed, you know, in a draft ready format to where, you know, any additional work would make sense. So I just wanted to make that that comment.
Hi Irene, it's Lisa. So yes, that totally makes sense. It's also, we also should consider some of the other studies that are currently being done, that like the, you know, the GS study and Long Island Sound, like all of those, that information I think would be also helpful, which they're still gathering that, but that's coming soon. You know, I think by the end of the winter we might be seeing that. So I think that should help inform the group in what we choose, because there's scenarios that you can place into their software that will give us scenarios of, if we did this, how could it help improve our situation? And I think these simulators are going to be really helpful in choosing what we want. So we should definitely cite, when you're putting your revisions in, that we want to hear from that study as well, and the data that's going to come from that. That's just one suggestion. And then anything else?
Yes, yeah.
Mill Creek and any of those other things that are happening right now, and the hazard mitigation plans, I think we need to share that with this committee, and then also have it help us decide which ones we present, which projects we present to the community, to say, okay, this is where we think we should focus our efforts on. That'll help and give us the most benefit. You know, instead of just a ton of little projects, but it might be more of a focus of, if we're gonna focus on, you know, everything that's in the Drowned Meadow area, for example, and I don't know all the logistics of the maps, but I mean, do you know if there was any studies, or did they see if there was any sinkholes underneath all of that dirt and roads and everything they put on top of Drowned Meadow? Like, is there a possibility of that happening?
None have happened. So the fill of the creek, of the Drowned Meadow area, was in the late 50s, when Brookhaven, just before the village was incorporated, when Brookhaven built the marina and filled out to the bulkhead and made the parking lot. The fill from dredging for the marina was put all the way back basically to the end of the Meadows parking lot, because that's where the Drowned Meadow marshland was. I don't know when it was filled. We don't know when it was filled for the fire station, but basically that was kind of late 50s when Brookhaven acquired the private properties on the north side of West Broadway and built their boat ramp, the trailer park and the parking lot, and the bulkhead. And they put the creek, which was going under the drawbridge on West Broadway, into a culvert that today you can see from West Broadway going out to the harbor.
And I see mostly firehouse areas, continuous flooding in that area, and I mean, that's where your town's safety and, you know, help is going to come from, and if they can't get out, that's a big concern. That should be one of the highest priorities, is how can we fix that situation?
Yes, it has been from very early on. The whole issue of the investigation of the steep streets has been to see if we can contain water on those streets or under Route 25A in dry wells before it gets down to Barnum and floods around the fire station. But one of the issues, it's obvious, and many of the residents in Port Jefferson have observed this, that in a extreme storm, water comes up like geysers out of the catch basins on Route 25A. So they're being overfilled by the steep streets, and not only bringing the storm water right down to where it's flooding, but it's
Filling up the
also,
meadow again.
it's backing up, even up the hill.
But you've got to get to
Gotcha.
the next phase.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to continue to talk with you, Irene, about this. The June workshop was what we thought as the kind of wrapping up of the data collection that was presented, and we got comments. In fact, we did a survey at the first public meeting in April 23, and from that we identified kind of sub-projects of one big project, which I've basically presented. But this was the June workshop flyer that went out to the village, and maybe we can go to the next. And at that, in fact, at 4 PAC meetings before the June meeting, we discussed these projects, 5 projects. The steep streets, which we talked about, the culvert. Was there any way to relieve or daylight the culvert? Old Mill Creek, the recommendations of the 2010 Cashin report need to be readdressed because they addressed flooding issues and they haven't been addressed by the village. And the harbor front, which is, again, the 2013 plan.
So those other studies, their suggestions for improvement in those plans still hold true now?
Definitely, the Mill Creek plan for sure. The other ones, well, the 2013 and the comprehensive plan don't discuss issues of sustainability that much. It's very brief. The number 4 needs, it had recommendations, as Francis had pointed out, of trying to make a greenway connection across the harbor and connect the village to the harbor. But there are obvious ways to use those natural solutions to address both the water coming down the hills, but more importantly, the tidal surges and rising tides.
I think with the most recent storms that we've had, and we've seen even more of an impact and,
Yes.
destruction. I think that should be reconsidered and look at all that just recently happened, to take a look at it. These solutions are still our priorities. I think that should be looked at, and anything else that's coming from Long Island Sound Study and everybody else that's out there doing whatever they're doing and measuring. I think we have to consider all that, and then I think we definitely have to go back out to the community and present it again, because the community is aware of all these recent storms. The last presentation that we did, the workshop for the village, was prior to 2 recent storms, so I think everybody's gonna be concerned, and we're gonna want a bigger turnout so we can have it be to more of the community. I'd like to find a way to do that, some kind of, we could tack on to something that's happening in the village where we get a lot of turnout of the community, and we can present there as being part of it, like, I don't know.
I'd just like to add that after the June meeting, there was a civic association meeting where the woman from the USGS was invited to present what their study was about, and they invited us as well. So it was a nice opportunity for us to once again talk about this phase here, and it was very well attended.
Awesome. Yes,
And it was actually for us, it was also an opportunity to just meet Chris Masters in person, because we had Zoom meetings with her, but we actually hadn't met. So that was, I think, the kind of thing you're.
And did they give you any suggestions, the USGS, or did they comment?
No, they had just started. They wanted to look at these projects, though.
They're doing their data collection now.
Right.
In fact, they're not solving the problems of Port Jefferson. Port Jefferson is a case study for them to come up with ways to look at
For a
any
model,
town.
right.
Model
And the
for
combined,
any
and model
coastal-
combined risks.
coastal town. So we've been giving them our work as it gone along. They've requested things, and their mapping is supposed to be finished in another month, I think. Well, let's.
Michael, quick question on this grant. The deadline
Is it
for the
December?
completion, is it
May 25.
May
next
25.
May?
Yeah.
So just to know, we do have hazard mitigation grant RFP that's going out for Mill Creek, Arnhem to the firehouse, Maple to down Main Street, that triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a study that for planning purposes as well. We have, and this, Irene, is for your benefit too, we have a grant that we are waiting for an executed contract on from Suffolk County, which is a jumpstart grant to daylight Mill Creek, to clean Mill Creek.
Which is also highlighted in this plan.
Which is highlighted in this plan, so it might not be a, that's imminent.
Mhm.
That grant is, the executed contract for that grant, we think, is imminent, and I air quote, we think. But, we are in touch with them every week to say, where are we? However, once we are there, put out an RFP for that, we can do the work, so it does, negate the need to do that in this plan necessarily.
We can
So
highlight other areas that,
maybe there's another opportunity elsewhere that we can look at.
Mm-hmm.
So what's it's May, right? You said, do we extend this just in case, or do we conclude it, Irene, and just take what we have? And
Yes. Yeah, so there's a lot of discussions, and I apologize. I have a lot of conflicts in the evening, so I could never make this. And I think, as some of you may be aware, I actually am in Syracuse, New York, not in Long Island, so it's not like I can make it. So a couple of things. So the Mill Creek daylighting from the onset of this contract was kind of noted that the village was going to try to do that project. It's fine to do that. It's fine to note it as something that was of interest in this document. And for background, since this grant was awarded, the vision originally was to use this document as a culminating place to kind of pull existing planning works and initiatives into one place concisely, and then do an analysis to kind of present the I guess foreseeing of projects, and then identify projects. And I had mentioned and I know that there's been turnover, but I guess the intention is you could list as many projects that you want or specify specific projects. The benefit of identifying relevant projects is that once this planning document is done, the village can turn around and identify, these projects for funding opportunities, in the future, potentially for our program. For, an extension, I will have to see where the project is at in December. And we can kind of reassess at that point. And the reason why I'm kind of hesitant is that if the Department of State's comments are incorporated into the planning document, and I have provided other resources, like planning documents that are really well put together. There's the CARP from East Hampton, I believe, and there's other documents and resources that can kind of help with the template, the style, technical writing, and things of that nature. So as long as US comments are incorporated and an analysis appropriate for this project is in the document, DOS would probably be comfortable saying that this is a draft that's acceptable, where the projects can be really hashed out. And since projects have been discussed ongoing, it really shouldn't take that long to do that piece. And there's different ways to get public input in various venues. If the village is doing different events, that can be done then. And then once those are done, and if there is additional funds, or if there's funds left over, then comes a conceptual design piece. And I've been trying to reiterate this throughout the whole contract, that this is not a designing grant, and we understand that. And if a project, or I think we had said up to 3 we had originally agreed on, if there was funding available, then some conceptual designs could be drafted, and that means absolutely no drawings or schematics. There should not be extensive estimates or cost for the project, because that is not in a planning project, right? So a conceptual concept and a brief estimate of the cost for specific projects, if funding is available, could be part of this project. So we'll have to see where we are in December.
All right, we're not excited to extend it, put it that way. And I mean, we're excited to conclude it in a successful manner. But when do you think we can expect those comments back?
Yeah, so I am swamped. We've had some losses, some staff members leave, and I have actually several projects that we're trying to get in a situation where it can be closable at the end of this month. So I expect by the end of November at the latest, if not before then. Unfortunately, some of these projects need a lot of hand-holding to get to the finish line. So, and I have unfortunately this month I'm doing a lot of traveling in training and in taking on more responsibilities. So it'll be a little bit difficult to really give the commitment for the end of this month, but please expect, in November, comments to be generated.
Is it possible or useful to share incremental feedback, or we need to have it all at once?
I don't think that there's going to be a problem to do incremental. I tried to download the PDF and convert it into a Word document, and it didn't do that very smoothly, so I'll have to do that once more to try to have a little bit of a cleaner copy for the Word document to begin my comments. But looking at it quickly, I don't think it's going to take an extensive time to provide the comments.
Irene, we can send you a Word document.
Yes, you could send a Word document, but it needs to not be shared through Google. It has to be either sent directly to me, or I do have the Esperia program, MySend, that it can be uploaded if that's easier.
Okay, we'll find a way. We have it on Word.
So Michael, you're saying we'll share the Word document
Certainly.
via the
The
format,
Esperin,
the Xrin, format to her? Word
it's a
in
file, 'cause
Xrin.
I
It's a-
can't do it, cause every time I do it gets converted to Google. So you would have to
We
upload
have to see
We'll work on it.
if we can do it in the office.
Okay, all right, we can do that.
Perfect, thank you.
Should we go?
I have to excuse myself, I have a Parks and Rec meeting, so
Thank you.
thank you very much.
This is Parks.
So here's the thing, so here's it, Rob, stay for 1 second, because I think we have an idea, we have crowdsourcing, incremental crowdsourcing opportunities, because we have multiple, commissions, councils, committees, pre-established that have standing meetings. We can do a roadshow with this,
Sure.
where we're not creating one, we can just, piggyback on some existing meetings, present there, and we're hitting probably over 100 people for feedback on this, and people who are already committed, involved, and engaged in some of these things.
Sure.
Parks being one of them,
Parks.
Erosion Commission, another, Rob Grimm's here as the chair,
Mhm.
of that commission. So we have resources to do that, Conservation Advisory Council, obviously, the Tree Committee. So we have budget and finance can look at it. We've got ways, we don't have to like structure it around one, we can structure it around one big, presentation in the Village Center on the, in the Sail-Off Room. But if we need to make progress before that, we can do that too. All right?
I think that's a great idea.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
We have a little bit of an ironic story that our office flooded in the last rainstorm, and all the panels about flooding got flooded.
Oh.
But they're easy to replace. But they have
They're just printed.
an interesting character to them now with a water line.
Artifacts.
We'll go,
Should we go back?
we'll go
Continue?
through this quickly.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
if,
I have to go too. Good. All right, how many more slides do we have?
I'll do these in
This is
5
a
minutes.
summary,
Okay. I have
Mayor,
5
of what
minutes.
you saw at the public meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah, a number of you've seen this
Seen it
a
more than
number of
once.
times.
Lisa has it, right?
So at the PAC meetings, in March and April and May, we discussed, could you go back just for a second to
The five.
one,
Yeah.
yeah. We discussed these 5 projects as things that we would
Right.
develop, the material from, which we had developed a lot of material, and those would be presented at the workshop for community discussion. So these 5 projects were presented on June 20th, and you can go to the next one. Basically, what we're doing now is studying each steep street to see what the problems of the catch basins and the general relationship of the street to the Route 25A and quantities of, and so forth of each street. So we're analyzing each street individually for
So
its.
does that have like sub-projects that go into this? Because steep streets is a big category. So is it like you would bullet it down to like certain areas on the map?
No, we're doing a general survey of each of the steep streets.
Okay,
Basically, the 4 or 5 projects are really one project, because it all starts uphill and ends in the harbor. So each one in like a necklace is a kind of chain going downhill. But, so on the right, that's the only kind of new information of what's been happening and was presented in June. You could go to the next. And we presented ideas. In fact, at the civic meeting, we got some interesting feedback from Steve Engelbright, who was very keen on these bioretention or storm collection in parking spots. Each of the steep streets has 1 lane of parking, and some spots could be replaced by water collection devices.
And an idea of a way to slow the water down to collect it into those places.
Another
And
one
that-
is
so
a,
that would be like a generic solution that you could use on any one of the streets.
Like if we remove parking on both sides of Main Street, we could build in bioswales all the way up. Am I wrong?
That would catch
well,
them all.
where it's steep, there are no parking places, unfortunately. Because it's really from Barnum to North Country that is where the water's popping out. But in any case, we're feeling pretty confident, and our engineers are looking at these solutions, our ideas, recommendations. And the other one is a continuous sort of gravel stone catch basin on up against the curb.
Like French drains all the way along.
Yeah, like a continuous. And on 25A, there's a standard detail on the left of a street dry well, which if we took one lane of 25A and put dry wells, the other lane could be open to traffic while that's happening, and the dry well could connect into the piping of the DOT 20-inch diameter pipes and relieve the water at the various intersections. So we can catch water before it gets to Barnum. The next one, okay. The box culvert, you can go. Basically, what we presented in June are these maps. The one on the lower left is where the culvert is. Nobody knows where the culvert is, but except that it's been filmed, and it's going at Barnum CVS over through the property of 440 Main Street, over to the back of the fire station, through a couple of private properties that are hilly, right next to the fire station, and it goes through this property and comes out at the Meadows grassy area next to that giant tree, and then goes over to Mill Creek.
Where's Theater 3 on that? Is it?
Theater 3 is here, the firehouse is here, the CVS is here, Village Hall is here.
And so the light blue is where the water used to be, Crystal Lake.
This is where Crystal Lake was. It went right through the firehouse
Yeah.
and followed the culvert way, and then it went over into the creek in two places. Our investigation is the possibility to daylight a number of bioretention ponds to relieve the culvert, depending on how much water we can absorb in our plans for the steep streets. But there's an idea about making kind of like the interpretive walkway for Mill Creek, a greenway that actually has discussions about sustainability and drowned meadow, and pieces of drowned meadow might in fact come back as bioretention ponds.
Do you all know when Jones filled in Main
Yeah,
Street?
1850 something. There was a causeway that went through the Main Street, you mean?
Yeah,
There was a causeway built right through the marshland.
okay.
And that, yeah. This you've seen, the Greenway, which you'll see in a minute. The idea is to take the recommendations from the Mill Creek report plan and to extend the Greenway walkway over to the pond. There's already a footpath, slightly dangerous footpath that could be built into a more public walkway. And the village acquired this piece of property to the north of Mill Creek, which could be turned into a passive green area that could also collect water in extreme rainstorms. So it might look like this. The other part of this, which is connected with the harbor, is to, and it's recommended in the Mill Creek report, to daylight the Mill Creek all the way to the harbor, to open this up. And daylighting cleans water too. It's not just relieving and collecting. The next. Yeah, and then we get to the last one. And then we presented some ideas about turning the 2013 plan into a sustainable park that would have this sort of bow tie at the top of rain gardens, bioretention gardens to collect stormwater coming from the harbor, storm surges, and one large one down here because the second largest place of flooding is basically East Broadway and the intersection of Main Street and Broadway. So this would be relieving that area. And to create, and this seemed to be quite successful at our presentation, to create a kind of water theater presentation of sustainable methods to deal with the rising and lowering tides as it goes to the creek. So that's, again, something that the engineers are looking at. The next one is the last one. This is basically the 4 projects as one. This is zoomed out to have the steep streets going down to this zoomed in view from behind the fire station to Mill Creek to the Harbor Park, Harbor to the, or into the harbor. So this was presented on June 20th, and maybe go quickly through the last slides. We can skip that one.
Oh. Oh, yeah.
This was the workshop. There were tables set up. These are the panels that got flooded. And comments were made, so comments have been recorded. It was reported in the newspaper, a nice 4 pages. Then again, as Francis has mentioned, it was presented with Chris Masterson of the USGS at the Civic. And you were there, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And just last week, I presented it in this land use conference, the first day of 3-day conference. So we have to work, I think, on the things that Irene brought up about getting the plan together. And the thing that's most important to us is that Lisa sent this out to you all. And for you to send comments to Lisa, who will send them to us.
Comment right on the document, just hit the comment tab and you can put your comments there. And even if it's the comment that you agree with the program or there isn't any revisions that you can see, just putting your name on the document that you did review it, I do need that as a record. And so go ahead, Irene.
And I just wanted to echo that it really is important. This advisory committee is supposed to act at the capacity of advisement. And I'm not sure if anyone from Stony Brook is on the call or in the meeting, but it's vital to have our scientific and academic community involved with, as well as community members that are impacted, or any other resources in the community that can provide the expertise level to assist in the development. So DOS, really our role is only to provide that technical assistance and help guide the community to get from the contract development to the end date. And I agree, if we cannot do a contract extension, that would be phenomenal. But so it's really up to you all as the advisory committee to really utilize this document in the capacity of being a resource to you and having it at the best capacity possible, having as much eyes and as much comments to really draft it. So I just wanted to also echo that message.
Thank you. And also, Michael, the document that I originally saw with much of the comments that were in red from the state, that was from last September, have we made all of those revisions?
We have tried to address all the comments.
From the original one that Irene sent that
Yes.
she did give
Yes,
us comments and
There
suggestions.
were a lot of comments about big sections that needed to be clarified and so forth, so we sort of overhauled the whole document. We've added to a number of areas that was requested, but we've also tried to address those comments.
Okay, and then the document that everybody has now has those revisions.
Yes,
They're going to comment on it. You've also gotten feedback recently from those the different presentations and committees that you saw in the USGS also. So you can also incorporate those, because after we do all that revision, that's the one I wanna give Irene to take a look at, to give us feedback on. So as soon as we can get that together and get to her so that she can get it back to us, hopefully the end of November would be great, so that we can continue to work on it.
could you set a date for when you want comments from the pack?
I would say 2 weeks from now.
You were writing this down.
That should be.
Good.
I was gonna ask for a deadline, is that how it's gonna?
Is there a
So
save
October
function, or
16th.
as soon as you write a comment, it's saved,
If you hit return, it goes in.
return?
Yeah.
And
Or-
Alright, cause I wrote some comments, I'm not sure, I made, it made it into the document, so I just did some screenshots, just so I didn't lose my train of thought.
You made comments to the first comments that Irene sent us, and they're on that. We've
I made
absorbed
some-
your
I
comments.
made some, I think Sunday.
Oh,
The
okay.
day of
No,
the-
but you made some 6 months ago.
Yeah, I know.
I haven't seen anything since, because I checked this morning, so somehow it
Okay,
didn't go
somehow
in.
it didn't make it, alright, I got an old system, unfortunately. I like it, but it's always.
And even if you cut and paste it into an email and then send it to me, then I'll put it in for you. But
Okay.
as long as I have a documented
Alright,
log that, with your name on it from an email, that this is what you're suggesting, then I will definitely get it in there for you, if you're having trouble. So we're talking October 16th.
okay.
And then that would give you 2 weeks to get it together and then get it to,
To you.
Another
so that I can
question.
send it to Irene.
On the jump start, the daylighting Mill Creek, did you mean daylighting the box culvert?
It's the culvert, not the
Or
creek.
daylighting-
No,
No, but
it's-
Daylighting the big round culvert that's under the Brookhaven parking lot.
No,
No, it's
it's-
the creek, it's
it's-
the,
well,
it's,
the creek is
I don't-
already,
I've seen the grant. It's DW Grocers doing
yeah.
it. Yeah, it's the cleaning out the culvert
The culvert
from
that's,
from
or
Maple
trench,
Street
yeah.
to the village, to the creek.
but I don't
But
think,
it's
I don't
not
think they're
daylight.
opening it up. I don't
So,
think
so,
they're
so
daylighting.
she,
well, it's supposed to extend in daylight, as far as I know, they're supposed to go out.
No, they're just cleaning it. I think it's
Well,
just a
clean
grant.
to a daylight
They were going to, the mayor was gonna ask to be able to clean out right where the culvert feeds into Mill
Right.
Creek, cause
That would make sense.
you can
And
see a lot
I think I
of-
saw an email saying that that made sense, that they wouldn't stop that because that's right where the work is happening.
yeah, cause there was some money left from the bid to clean out the culvert.
Yeah, and they said that
There-
they
That
would be
was-
able to add that without having to do a change of work order.
Right,
that was my understanding, it was cleaning the box culvert
Yeah.
to the daylight portion at Mill Creek,
Yeah.
right out here,
Yeah,
not daylighting the box culvert.
I don't think
No.
so. I don't think the
Like-
grant,
No.
is big- I don't think the grant is big
Right,
enough.
right.
no, it's just cleaning,
Alright, so that's a little different than what the
yeah.
mayor spoke of, at least as I understood.
Yeah, hopefully they'll be able to do some work in the creek, cause there's a lot of deposits from the culvert.
Yeah, there's sediment at the bottom.
But it raises the good, so the accumulation that you have in the open part of Mill Creek. You know, daylighting of a greater portion of the box culvert, south of the playground
Mhm.
to Maple. Those kind of same issues of accumulated stuff, accumulated vegetation, that would occur in any daylighted reach of the creek. So you
Mhm.
you just wanna make sure that you're gonna get enough stormwater storage there to be worth the, the maintenance, the loss of the resource, the field there, which is used for kids and such like that. So,
Mhm.
I think that's just an important part of the valuation of daylighting to create something like a Meadows Pond, you know, see how much storage you can
Right.
possibly get out there. Is it, how much value does it have relative to the total volume of water that we get
Yeah,
down at the
Right.
bottom?
that's what the engineers are doing now, to see if the thing, if it works.
Yeah,
And to what degree it successfully
because
works.
as you mentioned, the water level is not that far
No,
down.
No.
no.
There is a film made in 2019 of the whole culvert. They ran a little car through it with a camera and filmed the whole culvert. And basically from CVS to Maple, there's very little deposits in it. It has a reasonable pitch. But from Maple to Village Hall, it's virtually flat. And in fact, the report says in some sections, it might have reversed its
Right.
pitch. So that's where the deposits are. And it's about 20 to 30% full.
Oh, one other question for your final report, like, the DOS had mentioned that, obviously we're not, you know, this is a planning document. We're not could you let me know what the kind of expected deliverable or design level is for for how these ideas have to be fleshed out? You indicated that engineers are working it. She said you didn't need a full cost estimate, just a preliminary one. So what's the, what level of design or is necessary to wrap this up?
Yep, so I'm gonna actually answer that if you don't mind, Casa. So the Department of State's viewpoint on design really needs to be more of like a sketch with, like, you know, three-dimensional, like, you know, if you know, here is like where this thing will be and this is where this thing will be. There was like a conceptual design, I think, in one of was it the LWP strategy document? So what we mean is, you know, no drawings, no engineering specifications, and even the conceptual design needs to be very basic. Correct. And then for cost estimates, what we're looking at is not a breakdown, but a total cost. And I not sure, but I will try to look at some of our watershed plans. They have like a table that has like a cost estimate, and that is kind of where we're going at, but it's very basic. And that is why I've been saying this from the onset that this is not a design and planning project. It's specifically planning. But this is something that DOS had agreed with the village to have conceptual designs where appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any other questions? I think we will also work on signing up for these different committees that are happening in the village. I don't know when the schedule is, but I'll take a look at them and see if we can get signed up to present and get some additional feedback while we're still working on the revisions. And I definitely, when we have this finalized in the winter time, something else that we can present to the community with our final decision of the projects would be something that we should plan for. Does anybody else have any other questions? All right. Thank you very much for attending tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Irene, I appreciate that you were able to attend. Thank you so much.